A network of schools working together
to change how we learn.
We're students,
maestros,
industry leaders,
partnering together to increase community prosperity
in San Antonio.
We want to graduate high school
ready for college,
ready for work,
preparados para la vida.
Getting a diploma at CAST is just the beginning of our dream career.
We are the future leaders of our city.
We are redefining,
reinventando,
revolutionizing how we teach,
partner,
and learn.
It's my pleasure to introduce to you Mike Georgoff. We've had the pleasure of working with Mike over the past year in CAST Leads Design. He played a very critical role in our e-commerce development pathway, and I'm super excited to give you a short intro before he takes over to talk to you guys. But he is the Chief Product Officer at H-E-B Digital, where he leads digital product strategy, design, and management. His team's mission is to weave digital deep into the fabric of H-E-B from both the customer and partner experience. A veteran of high-growth consumer tech startups, Mike played critical strategy and product leadership roles at Redbox and Retail Me Not. Mike attended the University of Michigan, graduating summa cum laude with a major in political science and minor in economics. He was most recently Chief Product Officer at Main Street Hub, where he built a world-class product design and brand organization from scratch, leading it until the company's recent acquisition. So if you guys will help me in welcoming Mike Georgoff.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me all right? Wonderful. Well, thank you for the warm welcome. Also realizing, hearing someone else read my bio, that it sounds overly formal in this setting. I promise you this will not be a super formal conversation. I am going to share a few slides with all of you, though, really around the theme of the challenges we're all facing, and some thoughts on kind of resiliency and mindset that we've taken at H-E-B to deal with some of those challenges, and then share a bit about how I've dealt with those personally as well. I know we've all got challenges we're dealing with here, and maybe there are some tips and tricks here that might be helpful to all of you. I imagine we'll go through that for 15 minutes or so, and then I think we've got some time here for Q&A. And so looking forward to answering as many questions as we're able to get here today. But great to see such a strong turnout. Let me see if I can share my screen here. All right. So just a little bit more on the personal background. I grew up in Michigan. It's really cold there. If you've never been, that's primarily what I remember from my childhood, is being very much bundled up like this little kid. But lived there for all of my childhood. Great place, but really, really cold. I also went, as you saw, went to University of Michigan. I had no plans to get into the world of business or technology. So studied a lot of different things, but had no idea what I was going to do, but was fortunate to get a really great education from a top-notch liberal arts school, and also a university that happens to be really fantastic at a lot of sports, which I'm also passionate about. So spent 4 years at U of M. I then moved to Washington, D.C., and my intent was to work for either a government agency or a nonprofit on international economics and development and aid relief. But I quickly ran out of money and needed to pay the rent, so I ended up getting a job in sales at a consulting company that, by total accident, started me on my business career. After some time in Washington, D.C., when I met where I met my future wife, we moved to Chicago, Illinois. We lived in Chicago, Illinois for about 4 years. And that was where I really got involved in tech startups, and had the opportunity to work with Redbox, a movie rental company, right when that was getting started in what feels like a long, long time ago, back before Netflix and streaming was a thing, and DVDs and Blu-rays were the only ways to watch movies. So that kind of got me a taste for the tech startup world. My wife, who is from North Carolina, Virginia area, she didn't like the cold weather. We had a couple of big winter storms, and finally she said, "Hey, we got to move somewhere warmer. This isn't working for me." And so for the last decade or so, I've been in Austin, Texas, and worked for a couple of different tech startups in Austin, and then joined 2 years ago HEB. And so I never imagined that I would be part of a 115-year-old grocery company, but you all know HEB well. It is such an incredible company, incredible brand, incredible business. And what I've always been passionate about, regardless of where I've been working, is working on things and with companies and with people who have a real impact on folks' day-to-day lives. And HEB does that better than anyone else. And I think we've been able to demonstrate some of that impact and passion for the community and doing what's right for Texans during the current crisis. So ended up at HEB. Certainly had no idea we would be dealing with what we are all dealing with. And specifically, what I do at HEB is I oversee our product management and design teams, and work very closely with our software engineering teams. And so we're basically accountable for things like the HEB website, the HEB mobile apps, which you see up here on the screen. And so joined to really ensure that our things like our mobile app were as good as our stores were. And I'm really proud of what the team has done there. And we'll talk a little bit about how we're using some of those digital tools and digital experiences that the team built in this current crisis to help other Texans as well. So with that, I want to shift gears into COVID and some of the key takeaways we've had as a company. And obviously we're still in the middle of this and there will be much, much more to learn. So these are just the initial observations. First tip for anything like this we've learned, and I think this applies to, and I will say this, I think this applies to personal life as well. I'm talking about this from an HEB perspective, but as I was preparing this and thinking about it, I think these are things we can all take forward in our personal life. But number one is be prepared. There was a great article about in Texas Monthly about what HEB did to get prepared. We've got an amazing emergency response team that way back in January, before most folks were thinking about possible impact Corona, was planning and figuring out what we might do should this become an issue. And unfortunately, it did become an issue, but the reason HEB was able to respond well, and the reason we're still able to provide food and groceries to Texans while keeping our partners safe, is because of the preparation of that team. And so, even though the odds were slim that something like this would happen, we believe in preparation and planning for a wide variety of different outcomes or scenarios. And the other fun part here is we got our preparation was so good that Arnold Schwarzenegger thought it was worth sharing with the world. So that's something we're proud of on a cultural side. Tip number two is we also very early on, and we continue to do this, had to embrace the reality of what was happening. I think a lot of this still feels very unreal, and certainly if I think back to the first couple weeks, especially of COVID, it felt very, very unreal. And we've at HEB, we take pride for having a wide selection and a lot of products on our shelves. And the pictures you see here of empty shelves in the first weeks of COVID, I don't think we've ever experienced that in our company's history. But we had to embrace the fact that customers were buying different things. People were scared, buying a lot of stuff, weren't sure what was going to happen. And so we had to really figure out how to deal with that. And so there's a number of changes we made to our supply chain and our merchandising strategies and our marketing, including things that you've likely experienced as customers around putting limits on certain products that are in short supply to ensure that all Texans have the opportunity to get access to those. But we had to change pretty much everything about what happens behind the scenes in our business to deal with a lot of these new shopping behaviors and the response to the pandemic. On the digital side, and I'm going to kind of go back and forth between what we've done in stores and what we've done on the digital side. We've also had to embrace reality on the digital side. So this is one of the reviews we got recently for the mobile app that the team built. And the team takes a lot of pride in the mobile app, but we're getting terrible reviews right now because we can't actually give people what they want, which is specific products that they're used to seeing and used to being able to order via curbside or home delivery. And sometimes we just, early on in particular, we just didn't have eggs. And so, we just had to embrace that was something we were going to get, tough feedback on, and we were going to have to manage through that and do the best we could, despite some, some tough but understandable feedback. So we started to have to embrace these new realities, both in our stores and in our digital experiences. Once we embraced reality, it was then time to get creative. So once we kind of got a grip on what that new reality was, we immediately started asking ourselves, okay, what can we do to solve these new problems? And so many of you have probably seen either pictures or seen firsthand a lot of the things that we started doing early on in stores to enforce social distancing, which is such a critical part of controlling the spread of the virus. Everything from floor stickers to only letting certain number of shoppers into the store at a time to make sure it doesn't get too crowded. A lot of those things are for the protection of our shoppers themselves, like all of you, but it's also really critical that we take care of our partners. Our warehouse employees, our manufacturing employees, our transportation and trucking team, our cashiers, our baggers, our stockers. They're all on the front lines of this, just like doctors are, police officers, EMS, and they often don't get enough credit for that. What they're doing to keep things running. So we wanted to make sure we were investing in keeping them safe. So we put up, shields and barriers on both sides of our checkout stands. And this has really done a lot to ensure a safe environment for everyone, while we all get the groceries and food that we need to take care of our families. On the digital side, one of the things we've had to do, one of the most challenging things is, if you think back to that review we just showed where that customer was upset because they couldn't get eggs, we've had a number of product categories where it's very hard because of high demand to get the normal set of products we would carry. So normally what you're seeing here is, if you were in the mobile app and you search for pasta, normally you would get hundreds of different types of pasta that HEB would show you, all different sorts from all over the world, made of all different materials and ingredients. A lot of people are pasta's in high demand right now because people are cooking at home and feeding people, and it's an easy, versatile dish to work with. So what we've had to do is, instead of when you search for pasta, instead of showing you hundreds of different brands, we show you a very limited generic set of options. So, hey, we can get you some spaghetti. It'll be between 7 to 32 ounces. It'll cost up to $5.28. Or we can get you some shells, or we can get you some lasagna, or we can get you some penne. But we can't promise you a brand. We can't promise you a specific price point. Now, we communicate once one of our shoppers picks this out for you. We'll tell you how much it costs to make sure you're comfortable with it. But we've had to change from promising specific brands and products to promising, hey, we'll get you pasta. We'll make sure you have pasta. We just can't right now promise the specifics. So a number of other things there, but I thought that was one example of getting creative on the digital side. And finally, fourth tip is you look for silver linings. And for us, one of the things we've always wanted to do, well before COVID, is we've been investing a lot in our curbside home delivery services. And we've always wanted to do express delivery, where you could go online and get your groceries brought to your doorstep in 2 hours or less. As we've seen demand for delivery and curbside pickup really increase during COVID, it actually felt like the best time to launch this thing that we'd had sort of on the sidelines. And so we recently launched about a week ago express delivery in partnership with Favor, which is a food delivery company that HEB owns. And it's been really popular so far. So it's something that we'd always wanted to do. And you said, okay, although this is a gloomy time, maybe there's some opportunity here we can seize on. And then we're also using this as an opportunity to take a fresh look at how we do coupons and our weekly ads. We're committed to bringing these saving opportunities back online as soon as possible. But we're thinking about whether it's really the best thing in the current environment to print a lot of coupons and have people handle those, or print weekly ads and have a lot of people touching them. And so we're looking now saying, hey, could we offer those same savings, but do it all digitally? Could we do it via the mobile app and via the website? So all of our shoppers get access to great deals and are able to work within their household budget, but they don't have to be exposed to, work with paper or handle anything someone else might have touched. They can get it all digitally. So we'll see. That's in early phases, but once again, just a thing that we hadn't really thought of previously, but we're saying, okay, maybe there's a way to do this differently. So, those are the big things. Be prepared, embrace reality, get creative, and look for silver linings that have served us well as a company. And I think, has the opportunity to serve us all well in our personal lives. I did now want to pivot, and we'll open this up for questions in just about a few minutes here, but I wanted to share my my personal journey here because it's been a tough one, and I think there's something. And I'll share my story and what's been hard for me. I know everyone here on the call has we're dealing with a lot of personal challenges, and everyone's is different. But I'm a big believer in sharing sort of the challenges and struggles as well as the more successful outcomes, which are sort of some of the things we just went through. So this is my story, and to the extent that it helps you or you feel comfortable sharing your own. Hopefully it helps. So there's three things I've been challenged with personally as we've gone through COVID. So one is working from home. And now I say this knowing that I'm fortunate to be in a position where I can do my job from home, that I have a job, and I'm very grateful for that. But the type of work we do is usually I'm side by side. So these are the 10 folks who report directly from me. This is kind of my core team. I'm used to sitting, talk about social distancing. Usually all of these people are sort of within 6 feet of me. At our offices in Austin, we don't have any actual offices. We just have our desk right next to each other, sit side by side. And so I'm used to being able to spend time with them, work through tough problems with them, and generally just, I really love my team. I like hanging out with them. And obviously that's something we haven't been able to do during COVID. And so that's been hard. So we've had to find out new ways to work. I thought this was a fun photo. This was all of us when, Austin passed its mask ordinance, all of us doing a little public service announcement for our teams around the importance of wearing masks and face covering when you go out, which I do hope everyone will continue to do despite, some of the things that are opening up here in Texas. But that's been hard, and there's been a lot to learn about working from home. The other piece is we have two young kids. I've got a 2-year-old daughter and a 4-year-old son. My wife also works full-time from home. And just due to a number of things that happened with COVID, we have found ourselves without any childcare solutions. There's no other family in town. So it is, 2 full-time jobs plus trying to watch a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. And while it's amazing to be able to spend more time with them, it just doesn't, the logistics don't work well. And, they're little kids. They don't really understand the context. So they're starting to get upset with me because they see me at home. They're upset because dad won't play with them as much as I do on weekends normally. And I thought this was just an interesting set of shots. So this is my daughter. I'd given her some trail mix to snack on to keep her distracted. She promptly dumped it on the floor. She looked at me with a surprised but not so surprised face, started to get a quivering lip, and then just started screaming and bawling. And so, this is, it's part of everyday life, but it's not something we usually mix with work. And so things like this now happen when I'm on a, conference call with the CEO of HEB, and we're trying to figure out a hard problem. And Hayes, who I love dearly, might start screaming about something or another. So that's a hard piece as well. It's got some upside, but it's a challenge. And then the third one is, I've had challenges throughout my life with, depression and obsessive compulsive behaviors. And I've learned to manage that really well through a variety of mechanisms. But everything is so upside down right now that it is very, very challenging to do that. And so I've had to get really intentional about how to manage my own mental health, including things like exercising regularly, trying to create a new routine and structure to replace the old one that was disrupted. But it's hard. I think we're probably all feeling gloomy if you've either have challenges with mental health or have challenges with it previously, now is just a really, really tough time to keep those, keep those health issues sort of in a good place. So, I'm finding things that are working in this current environment, but, there are a lot more days where I wake up, sadder than I normally would, or kind of have to force myself to get out of bed where normally I would just pop up and kind of get after it. So, so this is something I encourage. If this is an issue you have, I encourage you to speak openly about it. Make sure you're talking about it with family and friends, and figuring out what works best for you personally. But this has been a struggle. And so, closing thought I'll leave you with, and then we'll open up for Q&A, is I've been a big fan for much of my professional career of the Stockdale paradox. And so this is something that was coined after Admiral James Stockdale. He was a senior official in the Navy during Vietnam. He was captured during the Vietnam War and spent 8 years in a notorious Vietnamese prisoner of war camp. And he was tortured repeatedly, and it was a really horrific experience. And he was one of the few people who, survived and got out. And he also got a lot of credit for keeping the morale of other soldiers who were trapped there up. And so, afterwards, a lot of people asked him, how did you do that? In particular for 8 years, and particularly, given that he didn't know when he would get out, when this thing would end. And there are a lot of similarities to what we're in right now. We don't know kind of how this plays out, when it will end. But there are two things here, and there's a reason it's called a paradox, which is they don't really make sense together, but they, yet they're still true at the same time. So he never ever doubted. He said that he would get out, that he would get home, that he would see his family, that everything would be okay. He didn't know when, he didn't know what that would look like, but he knew somehow, some way it would be okay. Now, at the same time, while he held that sort of belief it would be okay, he also embraced the reality of everything that was happening day to day and was very pragmatic about how to manage that. And those two things together, he said, you could only get through something like what he got through with both of those things. Without the faith that everything would be okay, he wouldn't have made it. And if he was a blind optimism and closed his eyes to the reality of what was happening and the things he had to deal with today and tomorrow and the day after that, he also wouldn't have got out of it. So this is something that, while not the most inspirational, I think I've found useful throughout my professional and personal life, and I think is something that is especially true right now. So with that, that's that concludes my thoughts on the world we live in. Why don't we open up for Q&A?
Hi guys, my name is Caitlin Vasquez, and I'm the Partnership Development Specialist at Cass Lead High School. Madeline H. is our first question. Okay, so my question is about the technological platform and how it became really important into the workflow of HEB as restrictions became heavier and heavier. So my question is, with your technological platform, your digital platform, how much harder did the team have to work over time as restrictions became heavier and demand for it increased? And also, how do you think it's helped out the business compared to businesses who didn't have the technology before?
That's a really good question. Thanks for asking that, Madeline. I will. We were really fortunate from a timing perspective on when this happened. As you pointed out, there are a number of companies in our space or otherwise that either didn't make big investments in digital technology or didn't have the resources to do so. We're fortunate that at HEB, leadership there saw investing in technology and digital experiences as something that is as important as the great experiences we offer in our stores. So this is something that we've been working on for 2 years. And as we built the new mobile app and rebuilt the website over the 2 years leading up to COVID, we built it with technology industry best practices, which allows that technology to work really, really well, even as we get a lot more traffic and a lot more app users, a lot more web users. And so it was already built to scale, and that made it ensured that we didn't have a website go down, we didn't have any crashes, and we were able to provide a lot more Texans with curbside and home delivery service and online ordering of their groceries. Now, that being said, we have had to make a lot of changes on top of that technology platform to respond to things that are happening during COVID. A couple of examples, which you saw there. So, the team's been working hard, long hours. Certainly there's been a number of, particularly early on, it was sort of nonstop 24/7 to get those changes made, released, and ensure we were keeping the technology up to speed with everything that was happening in stores. So, I'm really proud of the team for putting in, both the prep work, but also then the ongoing sort of level of effort and emergency response to continue to evolve and change that. But we were in a really fortunate position there that many other companies were not.
Okay, I've been looking through, and so Tyson Toscano, if you would like to ask your question out loud.
The question I asked was, how are employees that are still working at a physical HEB being treated? Because I've heard from friends and family who either work or in relations with others who work at HEB currently, and I've heard they've been treated very well. Could you give that more detail?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad to hear that. It's something that we've tried to do. We've always tried to do. And I think we've put extra effort and focus into during COVID. As I mentioned in my talk, this really is all of our partners who are working in the stores and those working in our warehouse and manufacturing and transportation facilities. It really is the front lines. Like if those Texans didn't show up to work, we wouldn't have food, right? It wouldn't and so I think it's a really amazing thing. I'm proud of the fact that at HEB, we've always been a leader in investing in compensation and benefits like healthcare for our partners, that we've always, sought to give people kind of full-time work when they're looking for it. So that's been a good foundation to build on. The things we've done during COVID specifically is, we've invested in emergency pay for all of our frontline workers. So we've raised their pay because we know they're taking extra risks to help other Texans out. We've invested, we've got a really incredible HR team that's invested in, things like testing and support if anyone does get COVID or has family members who might be impacted by that. And really importantly, we've invested in creating a new safe workplaces, whether that is the store itself, whether it is those manufacturing or warehouse facilities. I think that has allowed us, allowed our partners to continue to work and do the work they're passionate about, while also doing it in a safe way. So it's, I'm glad to hear that it's being well received. I'm really incredibly proud of all of our partners and the work they're doing, because it really helps all of us out.
Next question, R. Ruiz 1. Would you like to come on and ask your question? It's a great digital related question.
I'm here with my son, Jacob, and we were wanting to know how, if you handled any crashes that happened when there was an influx of users using the app. And then we added an extra question. How do you keep the app updated with inventory at each store? Thank you.
Both really good questions. Thank you for asking. So from the how do we keep the app and the website up and running, and have we had to deal with any crashes? Interestingly enough, back before in a pre-COVID world, and this seems so long ago, as many of you may have seen, we did a big Super Bowl promotion with Eva Longoria around running free groceries for life if you downloaded the HEB mobile app. And we actually, the app and website crashed when we aired that Super Bowl ad in February. And so we ran that ad, and all of a sudden everything just stopped working about 10 seconds after we aired it, because what do you know, people love the opportunity to win a lifetime of free groceries. It's a pretty incredible opportunity. So to deal with that particular crash, we actually had our whole engineering team on site at our office. We were all kind of watching the game and monitoring all the stats and performance of the various parts of our tech stack. And as soon as it went down, we opened up kind of emergency response team, and a lot of different engineers who own different parts of the system got together and started troubleshooting it. And we were able to get things up and running in about 30 to 40 minutes after that crash. And what that taught us was where the weak points in our system were. So we had tested it heavily, but you never really know how it's going to work or scale until you get real users and real traffic. So that pointed out all the weak spots. And so after the Super Bowl, we invested in all those weak spots and fixing and repairing those. And fortunately, like we now, on just a normal day during COVID, we often see traffic on the website and the mobile app that is equal to what we saw during that Super Bowl ad. And we're able to support it just because that's a lucky break. We've got a talented team, but it was fortunate we ran that promotion that exposed us that type of volume. So that's one piece. And then in terms of the updates, we're doing updates a lot more frequently, particularly to the mobile app. We would usually do updates to the mobile app maybe every month or two. We're now probably weekly pushing out changes or updates to Android and to iPhones. And then the website, we're sometimes doing updates as frequently as daily, just given that's the pace of change and what the current environment demands.
Awesome, thank you. Shifting gears just a little bit from digital operations to perhaps you personally, Emmanuel, James, or Jaimes, I don't want to mispronounce. Did you want to come and ask your question?
Yes. My question was, what things are working for you as far as mental health? Like, what are you doing day-to-day basis when you wake up? Or like, how do you get through the day?
Yeah, happy to share. And as I'll caveat all of these with mental health in particular, I think it's a very personal experience. And so I think everyone will need to find what works for them if this is something you struggle with. But for me, regular exercise and fitness is a huge thing for me. That's always been a big part of my life. I played sports in high school and growing up. And as I've gotten older, just kind of staying in good shape it's been a good just general stress management tool for me. For me, I've had to make a point of, even though working schedules are different and I'm not kind of commuting and things like that, exercising almost every morning is like the first thing I do. So I'll set my alarm at 5:45 a.m. and I'll get up, and whether it's running or, just doing some core strength stuff, I'll generally work out for an hour every morning. And what I found is that, like, I encourage you, if anyone's interested, definitely look into the links and some of the elements behind exercise and mental health. But I feel like my mood immediately gets better. And as long as I work out every morning, it'll carry me through most of the day. And so I found it's both a really healthy way to deal with any stress, but also I make it a point of doing that in the morning. One, to make sure I never miss it, because that's my time. As long as I set the alarm early enough, I get up before the rest of the world starts, before my kids are up. But it also provides that boost to kind of get the day started, which is important for me. The other thing I've been spending time on is just, given this design that I've struggled with for a while, I've learned what sort of things, trigger me to get in a bad mood or get really anxious or stressed out. And I've been practicing, and I write down what those things are. And over time, as I write them down and notice some, it makes it easier for me to catch it. And when I catch those things happening, I'll if possible, if I'm not in the middle of something, I'll just take a small time out. I'll go somewhere for 5 minutes, ask my wife to watch the kids for a few minutes, just close my eyes, take some deep breaths, and kind of get refocused, and don't allow myself to kind of get carried away by some of that stress and anxiety. So those are probably the two ones. And the other one, last one I'll say is, you know, I'm really fortunate that, you know, that we've got the two little ones around, and my wife's here, and it's that support, you know, mechanism is, you know, definitely really, really helpful day to day.
I have someone in my family personally who has gastric paresis, and he can't, like, it's not a diet that he chooses to have. He can't have many different foods. So what would you recommend doing, like, to get him access to the foods he needs, since a lot of the stores are selling out of what he can eat?
Yeah, I think the simplest recommendation, and hopefully this helps, is I would definitely call the store ahead of time and just say, hey, I'm looking for these specific items. Do you have them? And they might even be willing to set them aside for you. It'll depend who you talk to, but I'd give them a call and see if that works out for you. But I acknowledge it's a challenging time for individuals with very specific food-related health concerns.
Perfect, thank you. Our next question from James Goldblatt.
Hi, sorry about there's very little lighting. How is store operations changed with the whole, you have to stay 6 feet apart if you don't want to spread COVID?
Yeah, I think the main changes, there's two different angles we've looked at it from a social distancing perspective. One is to create, one is on the customer side. So that's, you know, both how do we ensure we don't have too many customers in the store? And so for every single store, we know what the max capacity is, we know how much square footage there is. And so on a store specific level, we have a count and a target for how many individuals can be in that store at one time while still maintaining safe social distancing. So that's something we focused on and then once inside the store, we focus both on putting safety measures in place in high density areas like checkout. We also have partners who we actively staff up to make sure things like certain aisles don't get too congested. So we try and make sure come in, says, hey, you know, hold on for a second, wait until one of these folks clears out. So those have had a big impact. You know, we've provided at this point masks to our employees and encourage them to wear those as well, which has helped create a safe environment. And we've also assigned full-time what we call COVID managers for each store. So every store has a designated individual who's in charge of ensuring that all of our partners in those stores are following safe practices, because there's a lot of force of habit. Folks are used to working side by side, standing within 6 feet. And so we have individuals there to help remind them about the new ways to work in a safe way. So that's probably some of the major changes we've went through.
So Devin's question was related to additional measures. So would you guys consider expanding the measures, like perhaps providing sanitary gloves at the H-E-B stores to customers to help increase the measures that are already being done for COVID-19?
Yep. We're very confident that the measures we currently have in place are really strong for the environment we're in. We do have a team within our HR group that stays very close to the medical community and evolving guidelines from the Centers for Disease Control. And we're constantly evaluating any new information or guidance around how to create safe environments during COVID. So if changes are necessary, we'll absolutely roll those out. For example, a lot of the when the CDC officially provided guidance that yes, wearing masks in public is advisable from a public health perspective, we were on that instantly for all of our employees, and we'll continue to do that. So we feel really good about what we have right now, but we also constantly monitor the environment and get that information directly from qualified public health professionals to ensure we're making the right calls for our partners and for our shoppers.
Has COVID-19 affected perhaps the pricing at HEB?
Yeah, another great question. And, I think the best way to frame this one up is a lot of Texans, like a lot of other Americans, are getting into really tough financial circumstances. And so it's more important than ever that at HEB, we're committed to providing the lowest prices possible. And that's something we continue to be committed to. All of our prices on different product categories, they change on a day by day and week by week basis based on whatever the cost of those particular goods are. So for some categories that are in really, really high demand in COVID, it's cost us more to buy those things from the suppliers who produce them. And so some things there will be price increases, other ones just because of different shifts in buying behaviors, or maybe as restaurants have shut down, they're not buying as much of a particular type of product. We can actually buy those goods for cheaper than we normally would. And one of the things we're proud of as a company is whenever we're able to do that, we pass those savings along to our shoppers. And so, so you'll see them move up and down just like in a normal shopping time. It's just which products are moving and how much the price is moving really depends on some of the demand overall in the country and some of the supply chain issues. For example, you've probably seen in the news, there's a number of meat production plants across the U.S. that are now shutting down because of COVID-related health issues. And so that means that, prices will likely change on things like pork and chicken and beef. And we've proactively introduced product limits in those categories to ensure that those products are available to everyone. But it's just a very unpredictable environment. But we do take pride and continue to stand by our commitment to being the lowest priced option out there for Texans.
Perfect. Our final question, and a great way to end. Victor Malloy, would you like to come on and ask your question?
Sure thing. And first and foremost, I want to say thanks to HEB for everything y'all have done. Can you hear me okay? Great. So my question is, what should students consider studying in order to become future teammates with HEB? Thanks.
Yep, that's a great question. I'll add a couple different perspectives, because one of the things that is so fantastic about HEB is that we have so many different opportunities available within the company. So I'll focus just on to keep it brief, I'll focus on the digital part of the world and some of the skill sets that are available there, including some of the e-commerce opportunities that we've been working on with the Cast Lead program. So from from the perspective of building mobile applications or websites, we hire three main roles. Those are product managers, which is what I did before getting into a leadership position. There are designers, and then there are engineers. And so depending on that particular field, for product management, a really strong business background and acumen is important. Marketing, accounting, those type of items. For designers, really strong experience in various kind of visual art fields, including interactive design in particular, is going to be critical. And then engineers, obviously, it's very computer science heavy, strong leaning into math and those type of programs. So those are a couple fields that are, I think, available. If you look outside of those and into e-commerce, we have merchandising roles. Those are the individuals who help decide which products show up for different categories on the website and how to promote those. That also leans very heavily on a strong business background, strong math skills. We've got opportunities in supply chain and logistics are huge, particularly as you think about curbside pickup and home delivery. how do you most efficiently do that shopping for someone else, get those products to the person's house or to the curbside. There's a lot of work, a lot of opportunity to be done there. That one, once again, leans very heavily into various business courses and in math and science. But, you know, all that being said, those are the things I would recommend. I'll go back to the fact that I studied liberal arts as both in high school. I studied a wide balance of things, and when I went to college, studied liberal arts. And what I got out of that I think is valuable to any of those is really strong critical thinking skills. So the ability to take a complex problem and break it down into small, understandable parts. And the other part is really great communication skills. So how to take an idea or a concept and communicate that to someone, whether it's a setting like this or whether I'm in a meeting and trying to pitch someone on a new idea for a digital feature, being able to communicate that clearly and effectively and convincingly. I think those are really foundational elements as well. And so that's the part I like particularly on product management is it is really a field that is very, I think, accessible if you have some of those foundational critical thinking and communication skills.
Yeah, I would just like to thank Mike for taking time today to talk to us and sharing his story. It's really important for all the CAS students in general, but we just thank you for your time and dedication to CAS Lead as well. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure being with you and really loved all the questions. So thanks, y'all. Stay safe.